First generation warfare, sticks and spears and arrows. Second generation warfare, muskets and rifles. Third generation warfare, tanks. Fourth generation warfare, aircraft. There is a war going on, and this is the fifth generation war. And that's what we're going to talk about in this video. Thank you again. Please like, comment, subscribe, and give us a thumbs up. And you'll find all the links for the guests in the description below. Isn't it, Johnny? That's what we're going to talk about, isn't it? Fifth generation warfare.
I'm not sure those are the orders of the warfare. I can tell you a basic fact about fifth generation warfare that's really easy to understand. Yep. The previous warfare that we employed was something where we used kinetic energy, kinetic weapons. You used to fire guns, used to fire missiles, create explosions, and kill people. And it was something that's a physical warfare. And that's the warfare of the past. The warfare of the here and now that's being introduced, that's being manufactured all around us and is already in full swing. It's fifth generation warfare, is about the mind, is psyops. It's about not knowing what's up and what's down. It's not understanding even if the fabric of reality is together anymore. It's losing all sense of what is reality, and that's fifth generation warfare. All of the tactics, that flooding the zone with false information, all of this sort of stuff, leaving us confused. It's a form of often mimetic warfare, you could say, rather than kinetic warfare. You know, it's the use of memes and tropes and behavioral insights and ways to push you and cajole you and shame you and watch you and do all of these different things to know that they're affecting your psychology rather than your body. No longer shooting you in the body with bullets. They're shooting in your mind with mind rays.
yes, 50, and it's been going on for a while, and it's I suppose with lockdown it kind of burst open because that was a massive psyop about wearing a mask and rolling up your sleeves for this incredibly safe and effective medical intervention. And I've had 21 boosters today just to be sure. So. And it's just continued. Actually, maybe it started before when it shifted. Perhaps when you went to school. Certainly, when I went to school, carbon dioxide was a critical element for photosynthesis. Warm air, water, carbon dioxide, plant growth. But not anymore. Carbon dioxide is going to be the death of us. So that could also be part of it. So, and it seems like also, Johnny, that we are being assailed and assaulted at every conceivable angle. They're coming for us everywhere all the time. Would that be part of it?
So the understanding the mind war, when we are in a state of a mind war, it's progressed exponentially, you could say, going forward. We remember World War I and World War II. In between, there's loads of lying to people, twisting people's reality, spraying people with crap, trying to affect people in loads of different ways, shaming people, using social engineering. All of that stuff existed. All of those are kind of like the bits of fifth generation warfare that are incorporated into just everyday warfare anyway, or everyday social order and the formation of social order. And after World War II, something happened. The people who were involved in warfare had this really serious moment where modern tactics could be employed on a battlefield to such a high degree that they had really got to a point where they had not only won the game, but realized the game isn't really over. It became two sides, the Soviets and the West, and suddenly this whole new dynamic, a whole new board game unfolded with a whole new enemy. And that Cold War aspect, remember, is not firing guns per se. not using other tactics. And that developed, that became the idea of using other tactics apart from guns and missiles, etc., became a running theme throughout that period. In actual fact, while they were gaming this out in places like the Council on Foreign Relations, they were gaming out nuclear theory from about 1951, 2, 3, all of the way through. Definitely while Kissinger is they're writing nuclear weapons and foreign policy. He's designing that. 1957, that comes out. That's partially produced, I believe, by the Council on Foreign Relations as well. And the idea of mutually assured destruction is only 4 years later. Herman Kahn produces On Thermonuclear War, and that set perpetual limited warfare and thermonuclear war and mutually assured destruction as the dynamic for the future. And when that got put down as law, like the idea that no one will fire a missile, a nuclear missile, because otherwise the other side will fire it and they'll just fire at each other. So if more nations have nuclear missiles, it's less likely others will fire. So it's nuclear proliferation became an agenda policy then after about 1957. They started to say 1961, they started to say, let's proliferate nuclear technology all around the world. And that was a really important part and aspect of it. But it meant there was this new dynamic. If people weren't, and this came up in On Thermonuclear War, Herman Kahn and Hudson Institute looked at the idea of what would happen if people weren't going to use nuclear weapons. There would be basically 3 other strategies that would be employed. It would be like minor perpetual limited warfare that Kissinger had come up with before. There'd be political spycraft and other things where people are trying to influence each other using other forms. There'll be false revolutions. There'll be, there's loads of different ways that you can actually have countries, nation states change or be taken over, or a revolution to happen, or other things to change the power structure in the countries. And that's how the Cold War was. It was alternatives to all-out war were all on the table. And that meant a lot of psychological operations, and we see the rise of things like MK Ultra program and other things, which were then testing psychology and seeing, because there was, a lot of psyops run during World War II, and that only increased exponentially as time went on. And as time went on, the chances that there would be nuclear war, because the nuclear weapons got bigger and bigger, the chances got smaller and smaller. And so the use of other tactics that are outside the realm of military became used more and more. And the intelligence infrastructure found something very interesting. They were able to make a massive amount of money, and anybody who worked with them was able to earn a massive amount of money, because a lot of it would be off the books or black ops or tax-free, etc., etc. So working for intelligence, the intelligence infrastructure has just grown and grown ever since, until the options when you're looking forward to the future. So in 1967, the same people, Herman Kahn and the Hudson Institute, are mapping out all the technologies that are coming in the future, and they're realizing that really in the future they're going to have to do things like put a bit of sedative in the water supply here and there. Going to have to find new ways to calm people down. Going to have to find new medicines. Have to introduce cybernetics to people into their body, synthetic biology and etc., synthetic genomics and other things, and they get more extreme and extreme and extreme, and they see the future as anything. It's it's anything that humans can do, they will do. That's kind of the future that they see. And that's led us towards this road. And this road, they already knew. They told people, I don't know, I have to admit, I don't know who first posited fifth generation warfare, but I think it was about the 80s or 90s. It was around that time that it first come up as an idea, which is, well, you know, the wars of the past are slowly dying away. And wars nowadays are much more used for some sort of social engineering. So destroy Palestine and rebuild it into something that's more coherent and acceptable to the Israelis and the dominant power in it. Destroy parts of Ukraine, rebuild it and reform the lines, whatever, you know, it makes no difference to them. They can do these small projects here and there. But the old world is going. The media world was control people very delicately using a very limited form of press, a very limited form of mainstream media. You know, you only had a few news channels, etc. back in the day. This is increasing and increasing. And as people get more access to information, they have a harder time controlling the information. And what they discovered is that there's tactics and techniques that they can employ to control that information in a different way. If you can't control the information, then you flood the zone. You put as much information out there as possible and force people into a point where they don't know where to look. They don't know what's up. They don't know what's down. And they've started to realize. And when you said about the coming back around, when you said about during the pandemic, what was going on during then, a lot of the behavioral insight teams and others were working with government during that period to try and work out how to make you feel guilty that you're killing someone that you love, to force you to change your behavior. And that was done surreptitiously by using carefully worded lines. And this is something that we know for sure. This isn't conspiracy. This is definitely something that they do. Now, we're coming up to a period, the era of AI, and these sort of behavioral insights and nudges will be algorithmic.
Before we get to the algorithmic ones, a couple of points. One is, I remember for viewers in the United States, one of the things we were asked to do in Britain about 8 o'clock in the evening on a summer's night was to go out in the street and bash these pots and pans for the NHS. It made absolutely no difference to the NHS in reality. Where I live, this quiet cul-de-sac in this little town, it was like, well, nothing's going to happen. But then people would come out onto the street to bash these pots and pans. What, 5-10 minutes or so. I don't think I ever did it, but my wife and my daughter went and did it. And what it showed, I think, was a demonstration of compliance. An outward demonstration of compliance. That's like an example of that. It makes no difference in reality, but people got trained during lockdown to obey.
I love that we can. This is something about fifth generation warfare that's really interesting. Is that something that you will perceive in one way, I will perceive in another way, and that will be used against us, and we will make our conclusions. And whether you're right about this and whether I'm right about what I'm about to say, you can make your decision on this. Now, let me see if I can change your mind about why you think that happened, why people bang pots and pans, because I think I might be able to change your mind.
Sure.
In China, when they were being locked away in the very first lockdowns all over China, they were protesting against the lockdowns by banging pots and pans out of their window as a protest movement. And when I saw that then happen in the UK, I assumed that they were co-opting the potential that could be used as a protest movement by turning it into something that didn't seem right, didn't fit right, didn't make any sense, but would only make sense to me if I was seeing that as a way to co-opt a potential way to protest.
Very good. Very good.
Fifth generation warfare. That's part of fifth generation warfare. Leave you thinking that and even when I say that now, I cannot be sure that's the reason, because it doesn't have to be one reason. It doesn't have to. We're creatures who love we love finding one answer, and that answer usually has to be a choice of two answers. We have to form binary dialectics wherever we go to make sense of the world. But in actual fact, the world's not built like that, and there's probably about 8, 9, 10, 20 different reasons why you want people banging pots and pans outside. Or the majority of them is to distract you. And even the very notion and the essence of banging pots and pans on your doorstep is clearly a distraction, even to yourself. Yes. It's about the noise. And this comes across a lot in fifth generation warfare. Now, let me give you an example of fifth generation.
Before you go there, Johnny, what you're saying is absolutely brilliant, because I didn't know that, but I remember it at the time, just putting it together. And then you say about the binary choice, right? Well, yeah, we do, this is good and that is bad. And one of the things I do as a child protection social worker, I have to keep challenging that. And I like to think I'm good at it as a social worker. I don't know how good I am elsewhere in life about it, right? Because when there's stuff going on in a household, I have to look at it from lots of different angles, lots of different perspectives. That this person, who everybody thinks could be the abuser, could actually be the victim. Or they could be a co-conspirator. There could be all sorts of things going on. And the other thing that comes to mind, Johnny, before you go on, right, because the whole thing about dialectic thinking, we're not trained in schools in Britain. We're not taught dialectics to be able to look at something from lots of different angles. No, it's just, and as you know, my 2 kids didn't go to school, the one you meant earlier, right? But the other thing about the masks, I wore the masks for the first 6 weeks, then I stopped wearing them. But what I saw was, one, there are people who are compliant and wearing masks, but it also highlighted who the potential troublemakers would be.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. Sorry, over to you now.
It also, I tell you, there was a couple of points, especially with the mask. So just say a very quick story. I remember, and this was on purpose. This was purposeful what I did, and I mean, in a sense, I've hurt my memory doing this. I've hurt myself. I've hurt my my understanding of humanity with this. I was holding my son. He's 1.5, 1 maybe. He's sitting on me. I'm in the supermarket. I'm not wearing a mask. I'm in Chile, in South America. I have nappies. I have baby food. And I go to the counter and I give it to the girl. The girl's about 18 years old and she refuses to serve me. And I say, it's baby food and it's nappies. Please. And she refuses. She would be happier to see a child not eat, not be clean, to make it so that she can make a point. And that was very clear to me. That's a very dark place. Humanity's, that's her. She was a young, pretty girl who's probably kind to everybody she knows. And she had been formed into something that would deny food and cleanliness to a baby. That's wild, in my opinion. That's wild.
Yes.
So,
which is another aspect, I think, of fifth generation warfare, the way that people are set against each other. Like, one of the things I've noticed, how political discourse has changed. Because for me, growing up as a lefty in London and going to anti-apartheid demos and everything, and anti-war demos, we would talk to people we didn't agree with. We'd engage them in political discourse and debate. It was all good. No, what about this and what about that? Now, I'm sorry, I'm not talking to you. You're on the wrong side of the fence. You're wrong. And that's it. Which serves our elites, because it's through discourse that we learn and we organize and we get connected.
So in about 2010, 2011, I think they had a reset, 2009, 2010, I think they do it every decade anyway. I think the millennium was one. I still think the 1990, 1991, 1992, that's the introduction of the internet. Like that's the introduction, the ideas of it, the end of Usenet and the beginning of the internet, the announcement of the internet and the creation of the internet and everything that went in afterwards. That had already been focused in on throughout the late 80s. There'd been big companies who had been dealing with that. And before that, the birth of that was kind of brought in the early 80s. And before that, in the early 70s, the transfer of data was brought in. There's this reset because of technology, really. And 2010, there was a lot of resets. There was a reset in medical technology. I talked with Professor Mike Yeadon a fair few years ago. I was in Chile and he read my Welcome 5 article and he demanded we have a conversation because he was amazed. He was like, he read it and he was like, I was there through some of this and that's exactly what happened. And he was very excited to meet someone who would like kind of got what the issue was. And it is a very small elite to manage that world. And he said that in one thing that really like he caught me on and made a lot of sense. He said by 2008, 9, around that time, all different chemical compounds that were possible had been tested by pharmaceutical companies. There was no other chemical, like there was no way to mix a match another chemical compound. They had worked out that this takes away your headache a bit, and this sorts out your liver a bit, and they worked out what all of the different alternatives were. And computers and biotech was good enough that it had done that at hyper speed over the previous 10 years, and there was no future medication that they could come up with because all of these compounds were known, and they had to. This big pharmaceutical giant saw that there was a precipice where, because ways medicine's designed, no one would, they wouldn't make any money at all off medicine. All medicine would kind of be free, and the rights to sell medicine would be free, and it would be almost a medical utopia in that sense. But they needed to make money and an industry, and they wanted to really go into RNA, potential RNA solutions, and that's there's a broad variety of things, especially in biotech, and a lot of that is also behavioral change technology, anti-anxiety meds and these sort of meds. You have to give like 300 pills out for one person to benefit. That's the mad ratio with some of these anti-anxiety medications. You've got to have 300 people who are not going to benefit and just get side effects for one person to benefit. And that's not really explained to people. But they know that by using different forms of technology, they can create basic versions of soma by getting into your cells. And they can chill you out. They can make you go bliss. They can make you calmer. And if they can work out that technology, use a different technology to make that happen, what eventually you become is so chilled, you're not going to complain, you're going to be compliant, and you're going to agree with whatever they want you to do. And so that's the technology they really want.
Which mainstream media certainly does.
Yeah. So that's 2010. That's the start of that. Yeah, that's what kind of Mike Eden was like. That's the time when there was a decision made, and we see this as well. There's lots of papers and things that happen and derive from that time where there's decisions to go forward, what they're going to do for the next. And we know this already because we've seen it planned out. At the same time, behavioral insight and things like this and nudge units are being classified as normal. These would be psychological operations 20 years ago. These would be MK Ultra style things, surreptitiously manipulating people's behavior by using social media would have been something that we'd been like, why would we want that in the future? But now, in 2010, they were working out social media, how it worked, how powerful it was, and they were working out, we can manipulate people by using social media, so let's start training people in it. That's when the Edge Foundation, funded by Jeffrey Epstein, is trailing Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Sergey Brin, and Salah Kamanga in 2008 on behavioral insight and how to manipulate people people by using the scarcity of poverty, the science of scarcity, or the psychology of scarcity, as the actual one master class is called. There is a time where they're realizing that there needs to be a change in how not only they form societies, but how they do warfare, and that's when this hits in. Now, the defense agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency in America, gets a new boss around 2012, 2013, a guy who had been working with Matthew Pottinger in the military, a very famous guy, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. And Lieutenant General Michael Flynn is quite a famous guy. Of course, he helped Trump get into office. He is a very important when it comes to the creation of military-grade psychological operations, especially related to fifth generation warfare. He's actually recently written a book on military grade, the incorporation of military grade fifth generation warfare by America. And at the same time, they're enacting it. In 2013, he's at the DIA, this Defense Intelligence Agency. This is the top agency with the most black operations. This is tier one. It's called a tier one organization where you don't even get to do freedom of information requests or know anything. It's total black ops. It's beyond CIA. It's where the Delta team comes, the SEAL Team 6, all of these really, really dark units that do the worst things around. And he's the head of there. He's developing fifth generation warfare as a military tactic against the American people during this period.
Okay. Now, what's the antidote? What can we do when we're being subjected to this at all fronts, and we're being subjected to it? Like, I may be being subjected to it and I don't even know I'm being subjected to it.
What's the antidote to being shot in the face? I gotta be honest. There's gonna be a lot of it's gonna get worse before it gets better, and I think the antidote is really they believe, the technocracy believes that they're going to win. Fifth generation warfare implies something in its very name, it's part of a generational change in warfare, and that it will end. Technocracy, in being called technocracy, it suggests that technocracy won't last forever, that it's a standard of government that lasts for a certain amount of time, and entropy, we know, is built into all things. So if we're looking for positives, and I'm not sure that's necessarily where we should be looking for first, because what we should be looking for is resilience first. In this moment of approaching fifth generation warfare, we shouldn't be saying to ourselves, how can we stop it happening completely? Because that's not going to happen. That's living in a fantasy world. And that's basically fifth generation warfare then.
Right. So then what gives resilience?
It's understanding the tactics. It's understanding what you're watching. It's understanding the very basics. An influencer is an influencer. That they have got their station and their power, and they spread out a load of stuff in unison. And at certain points, you just will become resilient to that sort of behavior. It's a behavior. It's a human behavior. And we see it. And, you know, people, they really like to jump on bandwagons. And that is being co-opted. And we start to see co-opting. When we look at the Epstein case, it tells us a load of different things. It shows us a load of corruption of the elites. It shows us this world that's disgusting and horrible and dark. It shows us all of these things that it's meant to show us. And why? What are we going to say from that? We're going to say, oh yes, let's go on and make a better world. So why are we being shown it? Understand. If you are asking the question, it's because you've been made to ask the question. It's because they have designed the world already. The same people who we're trying to escape have designed. It's all in detail, in plans, in meetings, in chart after chart, in places everywhere. From World Economic Forum Flickr account in 2009 has got 9 amazing slides that show the whole redevelopment of society. You could go just there. You go to just one place of these nefarious. You've got masterclasses galore at Edge, where they show you, they design the societies for you. You've got think tanks galore who are run by the most nefarious guys who are all planning our world, our future, and they're then showing you this horrible world. They're creating this horrible world, and they're showing it to you, and we're going, what are we going to do? We're going to go into it. Let's make something new. And they're like, there you go. And we make their society for them. We make our own cage. We make the digital panopticon. We do all that. Resilience is realizing that when we get triggered, we've been triggered. That's resilience. Is once the moment we've been triggered, the moment we're saying, can you believe this? We should be saying, yes, because we've been made to believe this. And we should be looking the other way and going, who's making us believe this? It's those bastards again who constantly make us believe stuff.
That's a very, very good point, because I notice how often I get triggered, and then I see people around me getting triggered. Something happens, and, all right, my head explodes, their head explodes, everybody's head explodes, except where I put some distance between. There's that going on, and there's some distance. Like okay, I can kind of look at it. I wouldn't say objectively, because I don't believe in absolute objectivity, but I'm not being triggered. I can observe. Just observe, whatever's going on. And then I think what else we can do is debate, discuss, and have discourse. Discourse is like this one. Okay. Go on.
Yes, but we need to have that in our communities. We need to have that around in the local cafe. I'm setting up to do live podcasts in the local cafe. To me, I think it's about time that I start getting people in to talk about things that other people may find uncomfortable, or may find comfortable, or may not want to talk about, or may want to talk about. Not try and do the Charlie Kirk thing of trying to make everybody angry and want to fight each other, but actually have a conversation with people, because all of that, the other stuff, the having a debate within your community has been made to seem like a scary thing where everyone's going to fight. That's on purpose by the same people who designed 5th generation warfare are funding that idea that you can have public discourse. There's a reason behind it, and we need to start having that discourse in our communities. And I tell you what, when you do, you suddenly discover that everybody is with you. Nowadays, no one is against you. There's no call of how wonderful politicians are. That's dead. That's a dead society. We've been made dead. But those people out there, they need conversation, and that conversation we're talking about, like we're having here, is the conversation we need to have in our communities.
Absolutely. There's no one saying how wonderful Jeffrey Epstein is, or Keir Starmer is, but Johnny, I will say, you are wonderful. And this has been a fabulous conversation. Newspace.com, do check it out. And please have civil discourse and debate with me. Put it in the comments below. What generates resilience? Please share this video far and wide. And between now and when I see you next, all the best from me and Johnny. Bye-bye.